Started for today's topic. We're going to start off. We have Tim LeSiege is going to be with us, and we're going to speak with him about what's going on with the Maine ACE Camp in the state, and then also about some of the DOT projects in the state of Maine for some of the airports. And but before we do that, we'll just talk about aviation events that are going on right now. We have on Saturday, March 11th is the next one that we have is going to be the Russell Field ski plane fly-in, which I think is probably going to be the last organized event, aviation event of the winter season up in Aroostook County. So, and Adam is on the call with us, so I'll pull that up. Adam, if you want to talk a little bit about that, I know you've got this planned for March 11th for Saturday, and with a snow day of Sunday, but I think you're going to have the weather for Saturday.
I sure hope so. So last year we did a similar event, and we had everything but the sun. We had some rain, we had some fog. It was just a really kind of crummy day for weather. So hopefully this year the weather will be on our side.
So you've got the Easton Trailbreakers up there. You had mentioned before we got on the call that they're taking care of the strip up there as far as the grooming of that. How big of a landing space do you have groomed?
Well, the strip is about 2,200 feet long, and I'm guessing maybe 40 or 50, I'm not sure, maybe 40 feet wide. So that picture there is from last winter.
Okay.
And it's going to be very similar to that. That's my red tailorcraft there in that photo.
Stands out in the white snow, doesn't it? Is that your house?
Yeah, that's why I chose that. Yeah, I have I have that red tailorcraft on skis, and I have a 172 tail dragger on skis as well.
And you've got the physical address, so people are going to be able to drive in. I don't know what's the snowmobile access. Are you guys right along the trails here?
We are. So at the north end of the runway, it opens up to a large potato field. There's no obstructions, and in that large potato field is where the ITS trail runs.
Oh, so real easy to get there then.
It's really easy. Yeah, so it's off of ITS 81C, I believe it's called. Yeah, 81C. So it's a connector trail. But the groomer goes through there, and then they just take a turn and come down and do my runway and go back onto the ITS trail.
Wow, and this is kind of how you pay it back, is by letting them use this for this annual fly-in. This is your second year doing it.
Yeah, and I try to do some trail maintenance and things like that. Last year, I helped them build a little bit of a road within my excavator. I let them use my excavator, and they use that to improve the trail system a little bit in an area. So then they just wanted to start grooming my runway. They kind of did it on their own. I always wanted to ask them, but I really didn't dare to. And then they just started doing it on their own and then asked me about my excavator. I said, yeah, come and get it. So that's kind of how it all worked out.
That's a pretty good deal. And you are on the sectional, I believe.
I am in the most recent, the most recent publication.
I'm trying to see where you are here.
Right there. You're right.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, yeah. So Russell Field. So it's just to the southeast of Presque Isle. I was hoping to fly up, but I'm not gonna. I could get in there once, but I never be able to get out. But I think I'll land into Presque Isle and see about getting a car and driving out to you guys if I can on Saturday. So
yeah. What are you flying?
That's an RV8. So I don't have skis.
That's an RV. That's cool. Yeah.
Yep. So, but is there anything else you want to add before I transition to Tim about your event that people need to know?
Not really. You can drive to it easily. You can get to it by the snowmobile easy. Any pilots that are flying in are going to eat for free. That's one little bonus for pilots. They fly in, they get to eat for free. We're going to do a little raffle and things, try to make it fun. We'll have some food here for people, and the Tucker, which is what the snowmobile club uses to groom, will be on display, so people kids can climb over that and look over that and whatnot.
And what frequency are you guys going to be on the Presque Isle, like 22.8 or?
Yeah, I prefer 122.8 because when you take off headed north on the runway, it's not very far, and you can see Presque Isle. So on the east-west runway, 10 and 2.8 for Presque Isle, it's kind of a nice idea to be on the same frequency in case someone's coming in, depending on the winds.
All right. Well, super. Well, thanks for jumping on and chatting about that. Is there any questions from the audience for Adam before we let him loose and we move on to Tim? All right. With that, Tim, you're up next. So I've got your website. Oh, here somewhere. I think I lost it. I got to find it in all these tabs. But if you want to go start talking about the ACE camps, I think you've got an announcement that you were going to put out. I know your website's not updated, but you had an announcement that you wanted to make about the camps for this summer.
Yeah, we have some extremely exciting news. And as you said, we haven't updated our webpage yet. We're working on some of the last minute paperwork to do it. For those of you who have known the past couple of years, we've had Maine ACE Camp North, based out of the Bangor area, one of the Boy Scout camps in Eddington, and Maine ACE Camp South, based out of the Brunswick Executive Airport. We're making a little shakeup. I'm happy to announce that we are introducing a new Maine ACE Camp to the family. It'll be based out of Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport. Its name will be Maine ACE Camp Seacoast. And because they are more south than Brunswick, we are renaming the Brunswick Executive Camp to Maine ACE Camp Midcoast. So we now have Seacoast, Midcoast, and North. For those of you who know ACE Camp and have attended or seen us or visited us, or we've met with you, one of our past campers, Parker Montano, has been working with Pete Marucci and I over the past year or so, hinting about how we might do this. And we decided to pull the trigger this year. The past couple of years, we've had canceled camp because of COVID and COVID-related reasons. But this year, we're hitting it strong with a new camp. Parker's partnered up with a couple of folks based out of Sanford. Parker was one of the spearheads, but because if you know Parker owns Pine Tree Helicopter. He will not be available to run the camp, so he's got a couple of folks down there running it with his assistance on the outside, and I'll be dropping in to help guide and mentor. In other news, Pete Marucci, as you know, has been the president of Maine ACE Camp for a number of years. Pete owns Colonial Mast Campground with his family. The campground has taken up a little bit more time than he expected this year. So to help him out, both my wife and I have offered to step up a little more. So in the interim, while Pete gets things squared around, I'll be the interim president for a while. So a lot of ACE Camp business will be running to my desk now to give Pete a little bit of a break. For those who know my wife, Darcy is the administrative assistant to Maine ACE Camp. She has been for a number of years now, quietly working in the background, handling all the camp registrations and the paperwork and making sure we get all the right permission slips and health forms and everything else that we need for Maine ACE Camp North. So she's been working quietly in the background, but she keeps Pete and I and the rest of the Maine ACE Camp staff really on our toes and make sure we get things right paperwork wise. So that's our huge news is Maine ACE Camp Seacoast. We're looking forward to it. The weeks that we're running Maine ACE Camp this year, Maine ACE Camp North will be running the last full week of July, which will be July 23rd through 29th. Maine ACE Camp Midcoast will run the following week, Wednesday through Saturday, August 2nd through August 5th. And Maine ACE Camp Seacoast will be running August 9th through 12th. The thing about Midcoast and Seacoast is we are both young people day camps. So that's our goal with the two southern camps, is to feed Maine ACE Camp North for future years. So our day camps run 7:30 in the morning to 6 at night. It makes for a long day, but as Jason knows, Jason's daughter was a member of our camp crew a number of years ago. We cram pack a lot in 4 days. I believe Jason was with us all 4 days, and I think both he and I at the end of each day were worn out, tired, and I think all the parents came back and said, thank you for wearing out our kids. They slept hard overnight.
And you're keeping the same age, the Bangor camps, the overnights 14 to 18, and then the
Yes.
other two are 12 to 16.
Yep. We say 12 to 16. We've allowed some 11-year-olds in. A lot of parents will write and say, my child's mature for his age. And we want to get kids as soon as we can. But because we still allow 16-year-olds in, we can't go, 8, 9, and 10. So 11 to 16 is a good ballpark for the South camps. Most of the kids are 12 through 15 for the most part. Because once you get 14, 15, they all want to go to North Camp. So we get it. But we also know that some of the older kids live in Southern Maine and still want the introductory side of Maine ACE Camp, which is what the Seacoast and Midcoast are all about. We do quite a bit, but we're still the introductory. Maine ACE Camp North, as most people know, with the week-long camp, they get 2 great days at Bangor International Airport, a day with Maine Army National Guard and a day with Maine Air National Guard. Weather permitting and DOD permitting, they get some extreme flying with our National Guard. They get up in the KCs and take a flight over New Hampshire and watch other jets tag up and pick up a little bit of fuel. Every kid gets to lay down with the boom operators and sit up with the pilot and co-pilot. And then the following day, they normally hop on a Black Hawk. We are reserving those for high school age kids. The National Guard is looking to get more members. For those of us who have known ACE Camp kids for a while, Chris Rodway was an ACE Camp kid counselor, and then he was training the people to fly the KC jets. So we've got some massive success stories with a lot of kids from Maine ACE Camp. And for me and Pete and everybody involved, we do it because we absolutely love seeing the kids. We love watching the wonder in their eyes. We love following them to see where they go. And it's just amazing. Just amazing bunch of kids. The kids are what really bring us back every year to do this.
Now, last year, I think it didn't work out too well. You just didn't have enough people sign up in time, huh?
We didn't get it out in time last year. There were a number of questions with a lot of our places we go still regarding COVID, masks, no masks, vaccines, no vaccines. And by the time we got answers back to be able to say we can go and pull the trigger and do it, it was a little too late for a lot of advertising. So we didn't get nearly enough campers, so we had to last minute pull it. This year we want to hit the ground running. Unfortunately, we're running behind on paperwork because of trying to bring Seacoast online. And those meetings, we had a couple set up that were delayed due to weather. Go figure in the winter. But we have it all set, and now we're moving forward.
I don't know what else you have in line for the people at Sanford, but I have worked with the people at Pease, and they do a really excellent program with the kids, simulator access for the aircraft, then also for the boom operators, and then the aircraft tours, which I think would be a viable option for the Sanford people. Yeah,
we're modeling a lot of Sanford after what we do in Brunswick. Again, we want to shy away from the DoD stuff only because we want to leave that for our flagship Maine ACE Camp out of Bangor.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked to them. The folks are interested in going to Pease. It's a little bit closer than Portland. So they may be doing some of the same things that we do, Midcoast does in Portland, right down to Pease. So their schedule will not be an exact duplicate of Maine Midcoast, Maine ACE Camp Midcoast. They have a lot of their own things that they want to do and they're bringing to the table. So we're really excited to work with them to bring it up to add into the Maine ACE Camp family, as it were. it's exciting times. Maine ACE Camp started with Maine ACE Camp North, Bangor. Then it branched into the Maine ACE Camp South, which at the time was called Maine ACE Camp Portland at one point, PWM. Then we moved from Portland to Brunswick. And now we've got Seacoast. So,
now, are you looking for volunteers right now for people to help out?
we are always looking for pilots to volunteer. I know Maine ACE Camp North, they try to take the kids up, but I can speak definitively for Mid-Coast. Wednesday when we start, right around lunch, we invite a lot of the EA chapters and pilots that want to come in and meet the kids and take them up for flights and things. We do that. We also offer them lunch at the same time. So all the kids usually get a chance Wednesday to go up. Thursday from Mid-Coast, we head down to Colonial Mast Campground and Mast Cove Seaplane Base. They're kind of one and the same. And we get a number of seaplane pilots that meet up with us, and all the kids hop in seaplanes. So we get 2 days back to back with pilots and flights. If there's any luck, in past years on Saturday, Saturday is our Rockland Day. We take them down to the Owl's Head Transportation Museum, meet up with PIA and the great folks there. We talk with the Katahdin 99s about all the fabulous women in aviation and the history of women in aviation. And in the past, we've been lucky enough, PIA had just enough time between their paying flights that they were able to take the kids up around the bay. So that's a hit or miss for us. But Owl's Head usually has a fantastic air show on the same day we show up. Go figure. What
like
better way to do
huh?
Yeah. It's a rough life, but you know, somebody's got to do it. As far as helping us run the camp, we're always willing to take on other adults. That way we can, another set of eyes on the kids is never a harmful thing. So we are always looking for volunteers as well to help us run the camps.
Was there anything else you want to add? If not, I'll see if there's any questions from the group, and then maybe we can transition to some of your state projects.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, they can email me directly, or our Darcy's email, I believe, is up on the website since she's the administrative person. So if you've got administrative questions, the paperwork, the permission slips, all that, Darcy's email address, I believe, is on there somewhere.
I'll pull up the contact section here real quick. There it is.
Yep, right there. And if need be, you can always, you know, if you ask her a question and have a second question for me, you can ask her, so get it to me. My email on the other side for ACE Camp things is spkdrgn@yahoo.com. That's my nickname, Spike, which is SPYKE, and the word dragon with no vowels. So spkdrgn@yahoo.com. And I'll be happy to answer ACE Camp questions or any aviation related question for that matter that I can answer. And if I don't know the answer, I'll go find it, because that gives me a chance to learn.
Well, super. Well, thanks for coming on to talk about that. And before we started recording, we were chatting a little bit about some of the projects in the state. Specifically, we're talking, I think, mostly about Frenchville, Northern Aroostook Regional. But I know you've done work out to Machias and a few other airports. I just kind of wanted to give you an opportunity, because I know I'm curious as well about future projects that are going on in the state.
Oh, wow. As most of you know, that I work with 27 airports, from Sanford to Jackman, Sanford to Frenchville, Jackman to Eastport. We deal with a lot of projects going on. Eastport, part of their apron, we're doing an apron rehab. So as you drive down the road to get into Eastport, we'll be working on the apron section right there. Just if you're looking at the fuel farm, just left of the fuel farm. So we're doing that. Machias, we just put in avgas in Machias. So if you guys didn't know, you can get fuel at Machias, you can get that now. We have a couple projects in the works for that. Machias was awarded a congressionally directed spending grant to do an environmental assessment for a secondary runway, which would be a longer, almost a crosswind type runway. So their consultant just sent in a proposed scope of work to figure out what the best direction for that is, and length and everything else. So we'll be working on that when I get back to the office. Matthias is also working on an AIP project for taxi lanes for hangars. So that's in the works. We got projects all over Maine. The town of Freiburg, Eastern Slopes Regional, was also awarded a congressionally directed spending grant to extend their runway. The first thing they have to do, like every other project like that, is an environmental assessment right out the gate. So they've got to determine what length is the proper extension length, environmental ramifications of it, everything else involved in that. But yeah, I get projects everywhere. The GA ramp in Augusta, we're going to start doing the redesign for the reconstruction of that. We've got a terminal reconstruction. The actual reconstruction for the terminal apron in Augusta is going to be happening this year. Jackman's apron rehab is happening this year. I mean, there's so many projects. It literally makes my head swim some days.
And you're a team of one there, right? It's just you as the aviation?
No. Oh, I'm the only engineer. I'm the only aviation engineer. I've got, we have a aviation planner and grants manager. That's one job. She does both. Her name is Jeannie Canagizer. She joined Maine DOT's aviation staff year and a half ago or so. So we're pushing pretty close to 2 years. So she handles all the contracts, FAA, AIP grants and things that we work with, processes a bunch of the invoices, and oversees the airport master planning projects. And about 9 or 10 months ago, we hired a new aviation director. So pretty much the first time in Maine DOT history, we actually have a one-hat aviation director. Past positions were aviation transit, multimodal people. This gentleman's job is just aviation director, and he's got a pure focus on aviation for the first time. So a lot of exciting things happening there. We're involved in the Maine, I know he's involved in the Maine spaceport, looking at electric aircraft, eVTOLs and things like that with Rockland, and bringing electronic, for lack of a better word, pumps, electronic fueling stations at different Maine airports. So he's currently working on a plan to do things like that. We've got 9 AWOS that we'll look to replace over the next couple of years. So we're working on a project to do that. So there's a lot going on in Maine aviation.
Anything in the works up in Loring?
Loring is a privately owned airport, so Loring is not part of the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems. They do not get FAA money, and we typically work with those that are in that system. So if an airport gets FAA money, we work with them. Private airfields, if they want us to come in and look at it or work with us, we'll happily work with them. But most of our time and efforts on FAA money projects.
I think that was one of the big things behind Twitchell's, is they were a private airport. So yeah. I know, once they start taking some of that federal money, that it's a lot harder to see those airports disappear. So, yeah,
FAA to get out of the NIPIAs and stop taking FAA money as a chore. The first question they ask you when you decide to try to close an airport is, how does this benefit aviation? And it's hard to come up with an argument to close an airport to benefit aviation. So if FAA does not make it easy, every grant you take with the FAA comes with, I think it's 39 different grant assurances that you're pretty much beholden to the federal government. When you get it, most GA airports get $150,000 a year. It's called entitlement money to run different projects on. You can save that money for up to 4 years, so you can work on a larger project. They have access for discretionary money for much, much larger projects like runway rehab, reconstruction projects, things like that. So it's nice to have access to that money when it's time to do large projects. I mean, it really is. But you have to, when you take their money, you have to follow their rules. And a lot of smaller private airports that are even open to the public, trying to follow the rules, very tough. That's kind of my job, is to help make sure those rules get followed.
Super. Are there any questions from the group for Tim at all about either the ACE camps or his work with the state of Maine? Doesn't sound like it, Tim. If there's anything else you want to add, you can go ahead and add at this point. If not, I'll transition into the safety topic.
So if anybody has a question for a work-related one, my work email is tim.lesiege@maine.gov. I work 6:30 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. But people who know me, my cell phone is pretty much 24/7. If you got a question about Maine airports or Maine DOT work, I answer my phone. So I don't put people off on at any point in time.
Looks like Jason has a question for you. He raised his hand.
Yeah,
Feel
it's
free,
not a question, but just a statement as far as after just getting done dealing with Vermont DOT in the aviation realm, we in Maine may take it for granted how lucky we are to have a team like with people like you, Tim, that are so passionate about furthering aviation in the state. So I really appreciate the work that you guys do.
I appreciate it. I'll pass that on to my co-workers at DOT. We love what we do. I love what I do. The fact is, I get to meet great people and go from tip to tip in Maine. And there's not many jobs in Maine where you can actually say, I cover the entire state in what I do. I get to work with public works managers, professional airport managers, town managers, part-time airport superintendents, great bunch of people out there that most of them love aviation. A lot of them, it's another hat they have to wear, and we work with them to make sure that we give them the best attention we can give them. So Jason, I appreciate that very much. It means a lot.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Tim. I appreciate it. And I'll send this link off to you as soon as it posts to YouTube so you can share it with your Maine ACE Camp audience.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks again.
And I appreciate you having us.
Thank you.
All righty.
All right, with that, we'll transition into the safety topic. This actually wasn't one of the FAA's, normally they have a topic that they put out every month that they say, hey, this is what you're going to talk about. This is one that was kind of inspired by events that happened recently in Maine, and it has to deal with the human startle response. And that, I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but there was a ski plane incident during one of the recent ski plane fly-ins. And I actually have the video of that. And it just made me think of a similar accident that I was involved in as well. And it just has to, let me share the screen real quick for you. How real it really is in an emergency situation. And if anyone has ever been in an emergency situation, especially close to the ground, you kind of lose track of time. And that startle response can actually delay the amount of time that you actually are functioning and able to deal with that emergency. And as instructors, how we deal with that is
drinking warm water before bed shrinks a swollen prostate overnight. Thousands of men are regaining control of their bladders.
Yeah, that was real appropriate. But so that's why as CFIs, what we do is we train with people and try to get them used to dealing with the emergency. And hopefully what happens is you become so familiar with the emergency that you that training kind of kicks in, and you're able to go and just instinctively take over and operate the aircraft. I had a problem here with, let's see here. I got kicked off because of something wrong with the internet here. Hold on a second. My internet dropped off. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today is that startle response. I've got a video that I'll present. I'll show that. I've got some resources listed under here. I had to change this link here because they actually just came out in 2022 with a new version of the Aviation Risk Management Handbook. And I've got that listed in there as well as a couple other items. But this handbook specifically is Chapter 5. They talk about in the risk management handbook, they go into some detail just about risk mitigation and some other items that are applicable to this topic. So you'll be able to find that link. That's a free PDF that you can get access to. There's also a startle response guide that is just a short 2-page PDF that's in there, and it just talks about just dealing with how you can combat and deal with these emergencies. Specifically talks about chair flying and using simulators, and some other resources are listed there as well. So what happens a lot of times with us, we get complacent and we do the same thing over and over again. And if you're doing a biannual flight review every 2 years, that might be the only time that you actually come up and you start actually dealing with an emergency. And quite honestly, as part of my biannual flight review, I usually always do a simulated engine failure. Because of that reason, we don't do it that often, and that tends to be the one that can get you. And I'll tell you a little bit about the incident that I had. I was at a very low altitude. I was less than 100 feet, and I had done some work on a seaplane that I was in. It was an amphibious aircraft, and there was a problem with the tail wheel. There was a water guard in the back. So what would happen is the tail wheel is supposed to retract up into the fuselage, and there was a guard that protected that wheel. And what was happening was the wheel was coming up over the guard. So if you push the nose up too high on the airplane and put the tail in the water, it would grab that tail wheel and just sling it to the aft position. So I'd been doing some work on that, and I had taken off, and I had my brother on the airfield, and I took off, and I just made a little turn, about a 45-degree turn off the runway heading, and I was basically doing a 360 return to come back over so he could look at that. Well, as part of that process of coming back down on the runway, I was in a bank, and the engine completely failed. And it happened so fast that I was rolling out of the bank, and I thought it was a flight control failure. So I literally brought my hand up over onto the stick, because I thought it was jammed, and I was pulling on it, and it happened that fast. And by then it was too late. I was already in the trees, and I impacted the ground. But the big thing with that is, with that startle response, honestly, I never even recognized the failure had happened. Like, you would think that it's kind of stupid to say that I didn't hear the engine stop, but that's kind of, how your mind processes at times, and you can get distracted. And I was focused on a flight control issue, and my other sensories weren't really helping me out in this situation. And I didn't even notice that the engine wasn't even running anymore. Not that it would have made a difference anyway. I mean, that aircraft, cruises at about 65 miles an hour, and without the engine running at about full power, it's going to pretty much come to a stop unless you drop the nose. So when I look at that seaplane or that ski plane incident, it kind of brings me back to that accident that I had, where he may not have even been able to process. And I understand it was a partial failure and it wasn't a complete failure, but instinctively you have to kind of drive past that and fly the airplane first and keep the airplane flying. And when you are closer to the ground, it is obviously so much harder to instinctively push that nose over towards the ground. And that sometimes you might be at such a low altitude that it's not going to help you anyway. So with that, I'll bring up this video that I made probably a couple years ago. Actually, I made it in 2018. There's the date on it. But it has to do with the human startle response and managing unexpected events. With that, I'll hit play, and I'll mute this, and then I have one other video I think to show after that. In this presentation, we'll look at the human startle response and an example of an accident caused by mismanaging an unexpected event, the cabin door opening shortly after takeoff. Then we'll look at examples of things that can happen in flight unexpectedly that can result in emergencies, and if not managed correctly, accidents. We'll take a quick look at the 5 stages of grief, aka the Kubler-Ross model, and how each stage affects your decision-making and management of emergencies. Finally, we'll suggest some strategies for what to do and what to practice to be ready when the unexpected occurs. The human startle response is a deep-seated reflexive action initiated by the limbic system, the most ancient part of our brain. For eons, it's been a recipe for evolutionary success, instantly preparing us to fight for or run for our lives. Running or fighting may not be helpful when coping with a rapidly developing aviation emergency. Success or failure will depend on how well we are prepared to deal with the emergency, and all too often, how close we are to the ground when it happens. Let's look at a case study of an accident that may have involved a startle response. This is a classic example of an abnormal situation that was not managed well, either because of distraction from the door being open, noise, or trying to close the door, or some combination of those. The PIC lost control of the aircraft while maneuvering to land and solve the problem. This unexpected event became an unexpected emergency when it didn't have to. Here are 4 situations that often catch pilots by surprise. In many cases, pilots don't revisit and practice how they will handle these and many other abnormal and emergency situations except during biannual flight reviews or other recurrent training. Multi-engine pilots need to be current and proficient with engine-out procedures on takeoff. With both single and multi-engine aircraft, an engine-out situation close to the ground requires a pre-planned course of action. Multi-engine pilots practice throughout their training, but many single pilots don't have any pre-planned idea of what they will do or where they will go in such a case. You can think of other emergencies where this kind of pre-planning will make for a better outcome. Here are the 5 stages in detail as theorized by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. The stages popularly known by the acronym DABDA include denial. One of the first reactions is denial, wherein the survivor imagines a false, preferable reality. Anger. When the individual recognizes that denial cannot continue, it becomes frustrated, especially at proximate individuals. Certain physiological response of a person undergoing this phase would be, why me? It's not fair. How can this happen to me? Who is to blame? Why would God let this happen? Bargaining. The third stage involves the hope that the individual can avoid a cause of grief. Usually, the negotiation for an extended life is made with a higher power in exchange for a reformed lifestyle. Other times, they will use anything valuable against another human agency to extend or prolong the life. People facing less serious trauma can bargain or seek compromise. Depression. I'm so sad, why bother with anything? I'm going to die soon, so what's the point? I miss my loved ones. Why go on? During the 4th stage, the individual will become saddened by the certainty of death. In this state, the individual may become silent, refuse visitors, and spend much of the time mournful and sullen. The final stage is acceptance. It's going to be okay. I can't fight it. I may as well prepare for it. In this last stage, individuals embrace mortality. People dying may precede the survivors in this state, which typically comes with a calm, retrospective view for the individual and a stable condition of emotions. When dealing with the unexpected, particularly if at low altitude on takeoff or landing, there is the element of surprise. Talk to any pilot who has experienced an engine failure on takeoff who did not brief what they would do below leveling off at the cruise altitude, and they will tell you about the denial phase. It's often wise when planning to surprise a student with a simulated engine failure, landing gear system problem, etc., to allow at least 5 seconds, often longer, before expecting them to react. Practice and preparation will likely reduce this reaction time. Our theme throughout this presentation is think about the unexpected ahead of time. In the comfort of your home or office, it is much easier to think through your responses to such an event in light of these 2 objectives. Let's think back to the case study earlier about the Cirrus that had the door open that resulted in a fatality. Let's think about what went wrong and think of a procedure that would have prevented this tragedy. Once this procedure has been created in your mind, it is important to regularly review and commit to memory this kind of procedure. We're not dealing with the kind of emergency where there's time to pull out the AFM or a printed checklist to make sure we did all the steps. In these situations, there's no time for that. Things are happening too quickly. It is also extremely helpful to either sit in your aircraft and do the steps, touching the controls you'll use, or visualize yourself doing the maneuvers in your chair and using your mind. It's a really good idea to be able to visualize your aircraft's cockpit well enough that you can do this anywhere, regardless. As long as you're going to practice, why not, after you come up with your new revised responses to unexpected emergencies, get together with a CFI and practice them for real in the airplane.
Better yet, if you haven't already, sign up for the Wings Proficiency Program and have those hours of practice count towards a Wings level. Like our pilot buddy here, practicing your emergency procedures regularly and imagining what you will do will expose areas where you need more knowledge or expose where your thinking is unclear. Now, you have a chance to sort it out and come up with a plan of action that works better and or makes more sense. There's nothing like the feeling you get when you know you're playing your A game, and in order to do that, you need a good coach. So fly regularly with a CFI who will challenge you to review what you know, explore new horizons, and they challenge you to always do your best. Of course, you'll have to dedicate time and money to your proficiency program, but it's well worth it for the peace of mind that comes with confidence. And be sure to document your achievement in the Wings Proficiency Program. It's a great way to stay on top of your game and keep your flight review current. Special thanks to Jay Mason, who is the author of this presentation. If you have any questions regarding this presentation, you can come to our Facebook page, Maine Flying, and post your questions, or on the YouTube channel below, or you can always seek out your local CFI or contact local FSDO for an FAA safety team representative near you.
All right. So there's another link that I have on there, and it has to deal with an engine out in a P-51 Mustang. I'm not going to play it. It's only for about 4 minutes, but the link is also in the description of the event. And it's actually quite interesting in the fact that this is not a full engine failure. Like his engine intermittently comes back, which some people say might be more dangerous because that can lead you into a sense of continuing on and not committing to your original plan of trying to maybe salvage the landing at an airfield and maybe just do an off-field landing. So in this case, he's in a formation flight. So it's and you hear the engine go out, come back in, and he ends up putting the airplane down. But that link's in there, and it's a good thing to. It's kind of an interesting video to watch. So especially because it's in a Mustang, which is a pretty cool airplane. So that's pretty much all I had for this presentation. Once again, I was inspired just by seeing that event and thinking of my own incident that I had. And it's just really, until it's happened to you, all I can tell you is, going over those procedures, in your head and your mind is really important. And that chair flying is really important. And, even if it's just you sitting in your aircraft while you're waiting for the engine to warm up in the wintertime, and just think about pulling out the POH and looking at what the procedure is for the engine failure, and just putting your hand on the fuel selector, or, being able to locate that carb heat real quick, or the mixture, or whatever the specific procedure is for your airplane. Run through that procedure. Because in all honesty, you might not know when your training actually kicks in, and you might not even remember doing it. And I'll tell you another thing that's I would advocate for people is kind of blind cockpit drills. Thinking about, if you're going to put this airplane down, in my case, I had fuel that had spilled out all over me, and it was in my eyes, and I couldn't see. So I actually had to, and I had done some training in the Army where they would dunk you under and you'd have to egress out of the aircraft in the water, and you'd do it blindfolded as well. So that kind of came back to me, and, visually referencing, where your door handle is, certain parts of the airframe that you can use as a visual reference to get out of the aircraft, your seatbelt, being able to operate that in a blind cockpit scenario, maybe even turning off the aircraft. In my case, the aircraft was not running, which was a good thing, because had it been running, it probably would have caught on fire, and I probably wouldn't have made it out anyway. But so that's just kind of something to think about. And I'd hate to see, I know I had one student that I kept going over and doing the engine out procedures with, and he really hated it. And then he actually did have an engine failure, and he ended up putting it, in a field in the middle of winter. And so, you may not like doing it, but some of these emergency procedures it's really important that you practice that, especially if you're going to have family on board. You want to make sure that you're ready and prepared to fly the aircraft and walk away. So I was going to mention, I saw a post that was online, and I had a friend who was up in northern Maine that was snowmobiling. So I called up Northern Maine Regional, and they do have up there access to a hangar. So if you want, there's a heated hangar, and I flew up there on Wednesday, and I stayed until Friday, and I kept my aircraft in the hangar up there. And it was a heated hangar. It's $45 for the first night and $15 every night after that. and then I was able to rent a snowmobile up in Fort Kent and go snowmobiling for 3 days. And they'll actually, I talked to the guys at Mike and Sons right there in Fort Kent. They'll deliver a snowmobile right there to the hangar, and they charge $4 an hour, so it'll cost you like an extra $4. They'll bring a snowmobile to that hangar. Matt up there in Frenchville will help you push your airplane into the hangar, and you can disappear up in some of the finest snowmobiling trails in all of Maine up there. So I just wanted to share that with you, and maybe give you some ideas of some events that you could do. But he also has a courtesy car, and in my case, he let me use the courtesy car for the entire time that I was there. So, but this is the hangar that he'll put you up in. It is heated with wood. So, when it was time to leave, I just pushed it out, and the aircraft was already warm, and I didn't have to deal with snow or anything. And it was really an absolutely fantastic time. And the trail is literally right there. This is the snowmobile that I rented, and you can see right in behind there, that's the airport of Frenchville. So Northern Aroostook Regional Airport. And the hangar that I parked at is this one right in here is where my airplane was. So if you're looking for something to do, that's just another idea that's out there. Matt says you're welcome to use his car if you want to drive up there. Take the car into Fort Kent. There's several restaurants that are in there. That's only about a 20-minute drive. A lot of restaurants in the area. Just another opportunity for pilots here in Maine. So that is it for my announcements. And is there anyone else out there that has anything that they want to share or have any questions? I think that's it then. We'll call it a night. So thanks for stopping in, and appreciate. I think Cindy, go ahead. You raised your hand.
I just wanted to let you know the video that you sent in the beginning, the Lake Ebimi. I was a passenger in that plane, and my husband is the pilot, and we're just watching, and we're here, just kind of taking this all in. If anybody had any questions or comments about what happened that day.
Well, I'm just wondering if some of the things I said in that class resonated with you, because I mean, it all happens, and I'm so glad that the outcome was as it was. But I mean, can you share that experience, and does it seem surreal and happen very fast?
Yeah, it happened very fast. I'm not the pilot. Francis, my husband, is, and he's here listening in. And we took off after warming up and all the protocol. I'm kind of familiar with it, just flying with him frequently. And as soon as we got up to tree top level, the engine just let out. And I remember very calmly having the discussion with him, what are you going to do next? And he said, I'm going to go back in. And he banked around to land back on the ice, and it was a very controlled crash, but and we were very fortunate. We walked away with just bumps and bruises. But yeah. And that's kind of, and I like to use real world examples, and obviously this has a great ending, and the airplane is like, at the end of the day, my airplane was totally destroyed, but I don't care about that now. I mean, it actually protected me, and I survived and walked away. So I'm thankful that it was a positive ending for all of you. Yeah, we were very fortunate and very grateful.
So let me just say something about so that this is Francis. I'm the pilot in there, and I haven't been running through the scenario in your head. I'm sure you did also when you had that engine out, right? I've done a lot of training with CFIs and so on. No one can prepare you for a prop stopping spinning, right? You go from it's not the same as pulling the throttle to idle. When that engine quits, you have seconds. And if you're not, my plan was, I'm unfamiliar with the area when I took off, right? And all you see is when you take off, you see the field ahead of you. And what I saw ahead of me was a bunch of trees and a camp at camps on the shore of the lake. And my plan was to take off and turn to the right and continue over the lake portion of it and circle around till I got altitude before I departed the area. Yeah, and yes, I did hesitate. There's no doubt that when that engine conked out, I'm like, yeah, in 2 seconds, all it took was two seconds, and that plane was already stalled into a spin. If you look at the video, 2-3 seconds is all I had, and thank God that it's just I don't think any kind of training. You talk about training with CFI. Yeah, the only thing I could have done is, because I wasn't familiar with the lake that I was taking off from, is if I had to just stay 10 degrees to the right, I had to push it down right away within 3 seconds. I didn't do that was my mistake. And
well, it's really counterintuitive, because and it does happen, and like in that video, it says it takes about 3 to 5 seconds to recognize the problem. Well, with you'd probably agree that 5 seconds, I mean,
I was done in 5 seconds.
Yeah. So, and depending on the type of airplane you're flying, and the aircraft I was in was extremely high drag, and I bet you it took 1 second before that aircraft stalled after the engine stopped. And it's counterintuitive to be at that low altitude where you're thinking that you need to fly, but like for me, I didn't even recognize the engine had failed. Like, it was so fast. And for you to push the nose over to maintain that airspeed, and you're right, it's almost impossible to train for something like that, because if you are doing it with an instructor, you see them pull the throttle back, and in your mind you can associate. You're not getting that 3 to 5 seconds in that case. You identify it immediately. But if you're troubleshooting or distracted, you may not ever even notice.
It is very disconcerting, and of all the hours that I've flown, I fly a lot, and usually the engine will fail if for the prop to stop, and it just blew me away. That was the biggest thing. I would never expect the prop to stop. I would expect that the engine would sputter and cough, or and I still don't know what's wrong with it. They found nothing wrong with the aircraft as far as the fuel and magnetos and air. So it just it was kind of shocking. I'm just gonna say.
No, I can imagine, and thanks for sharing, because that's sometimes hard, especially when you've been metal. That's a hard thing not to. You kind of want to keep it close, but to share that, and so maybe someone else can learn from it is very big of you, and so thank you for that.
Yeah. You look at airports and so on. Yeah, how many airports have I been, that you fly out of, right? And how many times do you look at the airport and look at, on takeoff, it's fine if the runway's long enough. You're flying out of Portland, you're flying out of Bangor, right? But if you're flying out of, I did a lot of my training at Minuteman, right? In Stowe, right? Engine out, where are you going to go? Are you going to go on a golf course, or are you going to go, there's still not a lot of options. If you're off the end of the runway, right? You're going to put it in the trees. So it's you have the picture. I had the picture in my head before I took off, right? What I was going to do, and I know it's going to turn to the right. And when the engine conked out, I was already banking to the right, and just didn't push the nose down. You can go through it in your head over and over again, but 2-3 seconds with the pitch attitude or straight, the way on takeoff, with the prop stopping, and the prop goes from pulling you to pushing you back, right? And that airspeed just drops like a rock.
Yeah, I was probably in about a 20-degree bank, and I was rolling level, and it probably stopped. It took about 10 degrees, and that was it. It was done. And and now when I go back at it, I know that the aircraft stalled. Like that's what it was. And it was just astonishing to me, the fact that I didn't hear the engine stop. And when I went into the trees, I just assumed the controls had locked up. And it wasn't until after I walked away and my brother came and picked me up, he told me what happened. Like, it has never processed with my brain. So.
Yeah. And, when everyone says, oh, things really slow down, and no, they don't. Right? It's like time accelerated. It's like, go from the engine stopped and looking at the ice on the runway,
Right.
in the snow,
Mhm.
right? That's how quick it happened, right? So, you talked about those reactions at the beginning. I didn't think I had any of those. It's just that the controls, the controls are not working. You can shake that stick all you want when you're stalled. Nothing's happening. Right?
That's fascinating. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
You
Thanks.
two fellows that medal, I'm curious, in hindsight, is there anything that you would have done differently?
There's nothing I could have done for me. I mean, there's absolutely nothing I could have done in that airplane at, less than 50 feet above the trees. I mean, high drag as it was, I mean, it cruises at 65 and stalls at about probably 55. And that it decelerates so quickly when the props, there's absolutely nothing at that altitude that I could have done. So. But in that case, for me, it was the mechanic installed the fuel pump wrong. So, so it's not like I could say, well, I would have done a fuel sample or anything like that. It was a complete fuel cavitation. So it was just a freak accident that happened. So I don't know. How about you?
Well, I just got out of annual on my aircraft, right? And, on the 7th of February, I took that plane up and I was flying around on lakes and landing on the ice and taking off on the ice. I spent an hour and a half flying around, and the thing just ran beautiful, right? And now just you don't expect that you're an aircraft that you take good care of and would do that. I'm still kind of freaking out about, I don't know exactly what happened. Is it carb icing? Is it, why'd the engine quit? Yeah. Just kind of baffles me. But I was slow to react, right? As soon as you hear that engine go out, push the stick down. Doesn't matter, right? But that wasn't my reaction.
But like you said, there's no way you can train for that. Quite honestly,
I do engine outs. I fly between Belfast and Freiburg, and I'll practice engine outs at pattern altitude. It's not the same. You're going to make the airport, and so an engine out on takeoff with a high pitch and usually I don't pitch the nose up that high, but it was a fly-in. They had the runway, the groomed runway for the ski planes closer to shore, right? Because of snowmobilers. And with a it would have been fine taking off with the maybe I shouldn't have taken off on the groomed runway. I should have just taken off down the ice, then down the long end of the lake. In hindsight, that's probably what I should have done. Forget the groomed runway for the landing area. I should have just gone across. But you run through these scenarios through your head, what you could have done. But we both walked away from it and said, damaged aircraft. Aircrafts can be rebuilt. So.
Any other comments or questions? All right. So once again, that risk management handbook, it's section 2A, and there's a section in here about risk mitigation, and then they also go into threat error management, which is it's an airline thing, and the FAA has done a good job with kind of bringing it about. They actually have an app, which I'm glad actually spelled out the name. It's Flight ART. So if they didn't put flight, you'd think it was called FART, but it's a flight assessment of risk tool. And that kind of gets you thinking about the level of risk that you're taking. And, you know, something like that, you know, you could look at your runway length, and if it is short, it might kind of push you more towards, well, what are some risk mitigation measures that I can take as far as thinking about off-field landings, et cetera, et cetera. So if you haven't looked at that, take a look at that. That link's in there in this chapter 5 and 6 is applicable to what we talked about today. So that's all I really have for everybody. So if there's any questions, if there's any other announcements anyone wants to make, that's going to be it for tonight. Anybody have anything? All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and thanks to everyone for participating, and have a good night.
Thanks, Sam, and thank Francis for sharing that.
Thank you. Have a good night.